The medical report arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked inside a plain white envelope from the insurance company. Derek stood in the kitchen, staring at his name on the return address label, his insurance, his account, but the patient name inside read, Sarah Mitchell, spouse. He almost didn't open it. Privacy, he thought. Trust. 23 years of marriage should mean something. But something had been off for weeks now. The distant looks, the constant phone checking, the sudden interest in girls' weekends that left her glowing and secretive. And then there was that wedding 3 weeks ago, her college friend's daughter, out of state. She'd gone alone because he'd had a work commitment he couldn't miss. She'd come back different. Jumpy. Guilty. Derek's hands trembled as he slid his finger under the envelope's flap. The letter inside was clinical, matter-of-fact. Patient presented with symptoms consistent with treatment recommended. Follow-up required. The words blurred together, but 3 letters stood out in sharp focus, STD. He read it again. Then a 3rd time. Each reading felt like a punch to the gut, driving the air from his lungs. 23 years. 2 kids. A mortgage. A life built together, brick by brick, memory by memory. All of it crumbling because his wife had brought home more than just wedding cake and party favors. Derek sat down hard on a kitchen chair, the paper trembling in his hands. His first instinct was to confront her immediately, to demand answers, to rage and hurt and make her feel a fraction of what he felt right now. But something stopped him. She'd be home in an hour. She worked part-time at the library, Tuesday through Thursday. She'd walk in with that careful smile she'd been wearing lately, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd ask about his day, start dinner, pretend everything was normal. And he'd, what? Scream? Cry? Throw her out? No. Not yet. Derek pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long moment. Then he opened his photos, scrolling back 3 weeks to the pictures Sarah had sent from the wedding. Happy couples. Elegant venue. And in the background of one photo, partially cropped out, a man Derek recognized. James Thornton. They'd met him and his wife, Patricia, at a company barbecue 2 years ago. Sarah's firm had done some consulting work with James's company. Derek remembered thinking they seemed like a nice couple. Patricia was warm and talkative. James was charming in that corporate way that came with practice. He zoomed in on the photo. James was standing near the bar, a drink in hand, his eyes clearly fixed on someone outside the frame. Derek's stomach tightened. He scrolled through more photos. In another shot, James was at Sarah's table, leaning in close to say something that made her laugh. That real laugh, the one Derek hadn't heard in months. The pieces clicked into place like a lock tumbling open. Derek spent the next hour doing something he never thought he'd do. He became a detective of his own life. He checked phone records online, hundreds of texts to a number he didn't recognize, most of them late at night. He checked credit card statements, charges for hotels on dates Sarah said she was visiting her sister. Lunch receipts from restaurants 40 miles away when she claimed to be working. It was all there. A trail of breadcrumbs leading to an affair that had probably been going on for months, maybe longer. By the time Sarah's car pulled into the driveway, Derek had made his decision. He carefully folded the medical report and tucked it back into its envelope. He placed it in his desk drawer, beneath some files. Then he walked into the kitchen and started making dinner, just like any other Tuesday. Sarah came in with bags of groceries, chattering about her day, about a difficult patron, about needing to pick up their daughter from soccer practice later. Derek nodded in all the right places, asked appropriate questions, and watched this stranger wearing his wife's face perform the role of devoted spouse. "Everything okay?" she asked at one point, catching him staring. "Fine," Derek said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about work." She seemed relieved, kissed his cheek, and went upstairs to change. Derek waited until he heard the shower running. Then he pulled out his phone and began typing a message to Patricia Thornton. The coffee shop was neutral territory, a busy Starbucks off the highway, equidistant between their 2 towns. Derek arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he didn't want, and sat in a corner booth where he could watch the door. He'd agonized over the message to Patricia. Too much information would sound crazy. Too little wouldn't convince her to meet. In the end, He'd kept it simple. "This is Derek Mitchell, Sarah's husband. I have information about your husband that I think you need to see. Can we meet? It's important." She'd responded within an hour. "Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Tell me where." Now, watching her walk through the door, Derek felt a wave of guilt. Patricia Thornton looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like someone trying to blend into the background. She spotted him and walked over, her expression guarded. "Thank you for coming," Derek said, standing. Patricia didn't sit down immediately. "Your message scared me half to death. What's this about?" Derek gestured to the seat across from him. "Please. I know this is strange, but I promise I have a good reason." She sat, but kept her purse in her lap, ready to flee. "I'm listening." Derek pulled out his phone and opened the folder of screenshots he'd compiled, text message logs with timestamps, credit card charges, and finally, a photo of the wedding. He turned the screen to face her. "Does your husband know my wife?" Patricia's eyes widened slightly. She took the phone, zooming in on the image. "That's James. When was this?" 3 weeks ago. A wedding in Richmond. My wife went alone. She said it was her friend's daughter getting married." "James was at a conference in Richmond that weekend," Patricia said slowly. "A medical devices conference. He goes to 3 or 4 a year." "Was there a conference?" Derek asked gently. Patricia's hands started to shake. She set the phone down carefully on the table. "I don't know. I never checked. Why would I? We've been married 19 years. He's a regional sales director. He travels all the time." Derek slid his phone closer to her. "Swipe left. There are more pictures." She did, and with each swipe, her face grew paler. James and Sarah at the bar. James and Sarah on the dance floor. James and Sarah in the hotel lobby, caught in the background of someone else's selfie, standing too close, his hand on the small of her back. "I found texts," Derek said quietly. "Hundreds of them. Late-night calls. Hotel charges that don't match her story about where she was." Patricia looked up at him, and he saw his own pain reflected in her eyes. "How long?" "I think at least 6 months. Maybe longer." She pushed the phone away and covered her face with her hands. For a moment, Derek thought she might cry, but when she lowered her hands, her expression was cold and hard. "Show me everything," she said. For the next hour, they sat in that coffee shop and compared notes. Patricia pulled up James's credit card statements on her phone. She had access to the account. Derek showed her the phone records. The patterns matched perfectly. Every business trip, every late meeting, every conference lined up with Sarah's own absences. "Columbus in September," Patricia said. "He said it was a 3-day conference." Sarah said she was at a training seminar in Columbus that same weekend. "Atlanta in July. Company retreat," he said. "Sarah told me it was a library conference." They weren't even being careful anymore, Derek realized. They'd grown arrogant, comfortable in their deception. Patricia set down her phone and looked at Derek with new determination. "What do we do?" "I have something else," Derek said. He pulled out a folded photocopy of the medical report. He'd debated showing her this, but she deserved the whole truth. "This came 3 days ago." Patricia read it in silence. When she finished, she carefully refolded the paper and slid it back across the table. Her voice, when she spoke, was perfectly calm. "I need to get tested too." "I'm sorry," Derek said. "I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize. You didn't do this." She picked up her coffee cup, realized it was empty, and set it back down. "My son's birthday is this weekend. Saturday. We're having a party at our house, family, close friends. Sarah and James will both be there." Derek frowned. "What do you mean? We weren't invited to." "James's sister and your wife are on the same charity board," Patricia said. "James's sister is hosting. It's at my house. You are invited." You just didn't know it yet. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm inviting you now. You and Sarah. I'll tell James's sister it's time we all got together socially, strengthen those business relationships. Patricia, what are you planning? She stood up, slinging her purse over her shoulder. I'm planning to give my son a birthday party he'll never forget. And then I'm planning to make sure everyone we know understands exactly what kind of man my husband is. She paused. What kind of woman your wife is? We could just confront them privately, Derek offered, though his heart wasn't in it. We could, Patricia agreed. And they'd apologize, make excuses, maybe cry. They'd promise it's over, beg for forgiveness, ask us to go to counseling. And maybe we'd be stupid enough to try. She shook her head. No. They did this publicly, parading around at weddings and restaurants. They get exposed publicly. Derek thought about Sarah coming home with that careful smile, kissing his cheek with lips that had kissed another man. He thought about the lies, the manipulation, the medical report tucked in his desk drawer. Saturday, he said. What time? The next 4 days were the longest of Derek's life. He moved through his routine like an actor in a play, hitting all his marks, saying all his lines, while his real thoughts churned beneath the surface. Sarah suspected nothing. If anything, she seemed more relaxed now, more affectionate. She'd come home Thursday night with takeout from his favorite restaurant, made plans for them to see a movie the following weekend, even initiated sex for the first time in months. Derek went through the motions, feeling like a stranger in his own skin. Afterward, as she slept beside him, he stared at the ceiling and wondered if James was lying awake too, or if men like that slept soundly, untroubled by conscience. Friday morning, Patricia texted him, "Everything is set." James's sister called Sarah this morning with the invitation. 4 p.m. tomorrow. Casual dress. Don't be late. Derek watched Sarah over breakfast as she scrolled through her phone. She looked up suddenly, smiling. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we've been invited to a birthday party tomorrow. Patricia Thornton's son is turning 14. Her sister-in-law called me. Should be nice, good networking opportunity. The ease of her lie was breathtaking. There was no sister-in-law. Patricia had called Sarah herself, probably using James's phone. Sure, Derek said, buttering his toast. Sounds good. You don't mind? I know weekend parties aren't really your thing. I think it'll be important, Derek said carefully. Some things you need to face in person. Sarah didn't catch the double meaning. She just nodded and returned to her phone, probably texting James to coordinate their stories. That afternoon, Derek met Patricia one more time, in the parking lot of a pharmacy 2 towns over. She slid into his passenger seat carrying a large manila envelope. I picked it up this morning, she said. All the photos we discussed, printed in color. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. And your medical report, right on top. Derek took the envelope. It felt heavy, weighted with the end of his marriage. Are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back. There's no going back anyway, Patricia said. Her eyes were dry, but rimmed with red, as if she'd cried herself out days ago. I called a lawyer yesterday. Filed for divorce this morning. The papers will be served Monday. I should do the same, Derek said. First, let them see it coming. Let them understand that actions have consequences. She gripped the steering wheel even though the car wasn't running. My son doesn't understand why we're having this party. He wanted to go to an escape room with his friends. I told him we'd do that next weekend, that this was important for family and professional relationships. She laughed bitterly. The things we tell ourselves to justify what we need to do. Do you think we're being vindictive? Derek asked. Patricia turned to look at him fully. They gave you a disease, Derek. They disrespected their families, their vows, and every person who ever trusted them. Vindictive would be spreading rumors, slashing tires, posting their affair online for the world to see. She gestured to the envelope. This is just the truth. They did this. All we're doing is making sure people see it. Derek nodded slowly. 4 o'clock tomorrow. 4 o'clock, Patricia confirmed. I'll introduce you around. Play the gracious hostess. Around 5, I'll say I have something special planned. Get everyone's attention. That's when you hand me the envelope. And then you'll read it. Every word. Every hotel charge. Every text message timestamp. And the medical report. She met his eyes. I want them to hear it from me. I want my husband to watch his respectable reputation crumble. I want your wife to see every face turn toward her in disgust. And I want our families to understand why we're ending these marriages. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Patricia opened her car door. See you tomorrow, Derek. Wear something nice. We're going to give them a show. Saturday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Derek dressed carefully in slacks and a button-down shirt. Sarah wore a sundress, something new he hadn't seen before. Probably bought it for a date with James, he thought darkly. In the car, she chatted about work, about their daughter's upcoming soccer tournament, about needing to book their son's college visit tours. She was building a future in words that she'd already destroyed in actions. You're quiet, she said as they pulled into the Thorntons' neighborhood. Just thinking, Derek replied. About work. About choices, he said. About what happens when people make bad ones. Sarah laughed. You're so philosophical today. Worried about a birthday party? Something like that. The Thornton house was a modern colonial with a pristine lawn. Cars lined the street. At least 20 people were already there. Through the front window, Derek could see balloons and people milling about. Sarah checked her makeup in the visor mirror one last time. Do I look okay? Derek looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the last time as his wife. She was still beautiful, still the woman he'd fallen in love with in college. But that woman was gone, replaced by a stranger who looked through him instead of at him. You look fine, he said, and got out of the car. Patricia opened the door before they could knock, her hostess' smile firmly in place. Sarah. Derek. So glad you could make it. Come in, come in. The house was full of people, James's colleagues, neighbors, family members, and Patricia's own relatives. A banner proclaimed Happy 14th Birthday Brandon, and a table groaned under the weight of food and a large cake. And there, near the back patio door, holding a beer and talking to 2 other men, was James Thornton. He looked up as they entered. For just a second, his eyes met Derek's, and Derek saw the flash of recognition, the beginning of fear. Then James's gaze slid to Sarah, and Derek watched his wife's face go pale. They knew. Somehow, they both knew this wasn't just a party. Let me introduce you around, Patricia said brightly, linking her arm through Sarah's. I don't think you've met James's mother yet. She's visiting from Florida. Derek watched as Patricia led Sarah deeper into the house, away from James, separating the lovers. James tried to follow, but Patricia's brother intercepted him, pulling him into a conversation about sports. Derek accepted a beer from a cooler and positioned himself where he could watch both of them. James kept trying to make eye contact with Sarah across the room. Sarah kept glancing toward the door, as if calculating whether she could run. But they were trapped now, caught in Patricia's web of social obligation and propriety. To leave abruptly would be rude, would raise questions. So they stayed, circling each other like sharks, waiting. At 5:15 p.m., Patricia clinked a knife against a glass. Everyone. Can I have your attention, please? The room quieted. People gathered around, expecting a birthday toast. Patricia stood in the center of her living room, suddenly the focal point of everything. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Brandon's birthday. But before we cut the cake, there's something important I need to share with all of you. Something that affects this family. She looked directly at James. Something that affects several families, actually. She held out her hand toward Derek. It was time. Derek's heart hammered as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope. The room had gone quiet with that particular silence that comes when people sense something important is about to happen. Patricia's son, Brandon, stood near the birthday cake, confusion written across his teenage face. Derek walked through the crowd toward Patricia, feeling every eye follow him. He could see Sarah's face draining of color, see James starting to move forward before Patricia's brother casually stepped into his path. "Patricia, what's going on?" James's mother asked, her voice carrying that maternal concern that made everyone stop and listen. "That's what I'm about to explain, Margaret," Patricia said, taking the envelope from Derek with steady hands. "Thank you, Derek. Why don't you stand here with me?" Derek positioned himself beside her, and together they faced the room. Sarah had backed up against the dining room wall, her hand over her mouth. James had gone very still, his beer bottle forgotten in his hand. 6 days ago, Patricia began, her voice clear and strong, Derek received something in the mail. Something that came to his address because his wife, Sarah, is on his insurance. Something that made him realize his marriage wasn't what he thought it was. "Patricia, please," James said, his voice strained. "Not here. Not now. Can we talk privately?" "Why privately, James? You didn't conduct your affair privately. You took her to weddings, to restaurants, to hotels. You used our money, our family resources, our trust." Patricia opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. "This is a medical report, dated 2 weeks ago. Sarah Mitchell, patient. Treated for chlamydia. Exposure estimated to have occurred approximately 4 weeks prior." Gasps rippled through the room. Sarah made a small, wounded sound. "That can't be right," James's sister said. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Patricia continued. "Because 4 weeks ago, Sarah attended a wedding in Richmond, Virginia. Alone. And James," she looked at her husband, "you told me you were at a medical devices conference in Richmond that same weekend. Do you remember?" The room was so silent Derek could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. "I think we should take this elsewhere," James said, his corporate Polish cracking. "There are children here. Our son is 14, James. Old enough to learn what kind of man his father really is." Patricia pulled out more papers. "These are credit card statements. I've highlighted the relevant charges. March 15th, Hampton Inn, Columbus, Ohio. 2 rooms, checked in on the same day, adjoining rooms specifically requested. Sarah," she looked at Derek's wife, "you told your husband you were at a library conference that weekend." Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked at Derek, and he saw her mouth the word please. "June 23rd, Patricia continued, her voice never wavering. Marriott Atlanta downtown. July 18th, Hilton Garden Inn, Philadelphia. August 9th, Sheraton Boston. Every single trip matched." She spread the papers out on the coffee table. "Here are the phone records. Hundreds of texts. Thousands of minutes. Late night calls. Early morning calls. Calls made while Derek was at work. Calls made while I was putting our son to bed." "Mom." Brandon's voice cracked. "What's happening?" Patricia's composure broke for just a second. She looked at her son, and Derek saw the pain flash across her face before she mastered it. "Your father betrayed our family, sweetheart. He had an affair with Mrs. Mitchell. I'm sorry you have to learn about it this way, but you deserve to know the truth." James finally moved, pushing past Patricia's brother. "Brandon, son, it's complicated." "It's not complicated," Patricia cut him off. "You made a choice. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to risk your family for," she gestured at Sarah, "for whatever this was." James's mother had sat down heavily on the couch, her face ashen. Other guests stood frozen, unsure whether to stay or go. The social contract had been shattered, and no one knew the rules anymore. Sarah pushed off from the wall, her voice desperate. "Derek, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, it didn't mean anything." "It meant something to me when I read that medical report," Derek said, speaking for the first time. His voice came out calmer than he felt. "It meant something when I realized you'd exposed me to disease. When I had to go get tested. When I had to sit in a clinic and explain to a doctor that my wife of 23 years had been unfaithful. "Oh my God," someone whispered. Derek couldn't tell who. Patricia wasn't finished. She pulled out more papers, photographs this time. Here's a picture from the Richmond wedding. James and Sarah, dancing. James and Sarah at the bar. James and Sarah in the hotel lobby. She handed them around like she was dealing cards. Here's a text from April. "Can't wait to see you. Told P I have a meeting in Chicago." From Sarah to James's phone, 2:47 a.m. Another paper. Here's James's response. "Told D I have a conference. Got us the suite with the jetted tub you liked." Sarah was sobbing openly now, her carefully constructed life falling apart in real time. Several guests had started quietly gathering their things, desperate to escape the wreckage. "Why?" James's mother asked, looking at her son with bewildered hurt. "Why would you do this? Patricia is a good woman. Brandon needs his father." "He needed his father to be faithful," Patricia said sharply. "He needed his father to be honest. He needed his father to be a man of integrity." She turned back to James. "But that's not who you are, is it? You're a man who lies, who sneaks around, who values his own pleasure over his family's well-being." "You're humiliating them," James's sister protested. "This is cruel." "You know what's cruel." Derek finally snapped. "Finding out your wife gave you an STD. Having to explain to your kids why their parents are getting divorced. Wondering how many times she lied to your face, how many dinners you ate together while she was planning her next betrayal." He looked at Sarah. "How long? How long were you going to keep lying?" Sarah couldn't answer. She just stood there, mascara running, her new sundress seeming to mock the pretense of innocence she'd tried to maintain. Patricia gathered up all the papers and photos, putting them back in the envelope. "I want everyone here to understand something. Derek and I didn't do this to be vindictive. We did this because our spouses stole something from us, our trust, our peace of mind, our health, our futures. They did it knowingly and repeatedly. They looked us in the eyes and lied." She looked around the room. "And I wanted you all to know why our marriages are ending. I wanted you to know exactly who is responsible." "I think it's time for people to go," Patricia's brother said quietly. He started ushering guests toward the door. Most went willingly, eager to escape, though Derek saw them pulling out phones as soon as they reached their cars. The story would be all over town by tomorrow. James's mother approached Patricia, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry he did this to you." "It's not your fault, Margaret. He's still my son. But what he did. I'm ashamed." She looked at James with something close to disgust. "I raised you better than this." Within 15 minutes, the house had emptied except for Derek, Sarah, Patricia, James, Brandon, and Patricia's brother. The birthday cake sat untouched, its cheerful message now seeming obscene. Brandon had disappeared upstairs. They could hear his door slam. "I'll go talk to him," Patricia's brother offered. "No," Patricia said. "Let him process. He needs time." Sarah took a tentative step toward Derek. "Can we go home, please? We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," Derek said. "I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. You can have the house for now. I'll be in touch through my lawyer." "Derek, please, don't do this." "I didn't do this, Sarah. You did." He turned to Patricia. "Thank you for having the courage to do what needed to be done." Patricia nodded, her facade finally cracking. "Take care of yourself, Derek." As Derek walked to his car, he heard Sarah calling his name, heard her heels clicking on the driveway as she tried to follow him. He didn't look back. Behind them, in the house, he could hear James starting to argue with Patricia, his voice rising, probably trying to claim some high ground that no longer existed. Derek got in his car and drove away, leaving behind the ruins of his old life and the woman he'd once loved. In his rearview mirror, he saw Sarah standing in the street, watching him go, finally understanding that some things, once broken, can never be repaired. Derek spent that night in a Hampton Inn. The irony wasn't lost on him, staring at his phone. 17 missed calls from Sarah. 12 text messages that escalated from apologetic to angry to desperate and back to apologetic again. He read none of them. Instead, he called his daughter. Emily was a junior at State, studying engineering like her father. She answered on the third ring, her voice wary. "Dad? It's kind of late. I need to tell you something," Derek said. "About your mother and me." There was a long pause. "Sarah already called me. She's hysterical. She said you humiliated her at a party and left her. What's going on?" Derek closed his eyes. Of course Sarah had already started building her narrative, painting herself as the victim. That's not what happened. Your mother had an affair, Emily. For at least 6 months, probably longer. I found out last week. Today, I made sure people knew the truth about why our marriage is ending. Another long silence. Then, "Oh, Dad. I'm so sorry." They talked for over an hour. Derek told her everything, the medical report, the evidence, the party. Emily cried, asked questions, got angry at Sarah, then cried some more. Finally, she said, "What do you need from me?" "Just understanding. I know this affects you and your brother. I'm sorry for that." "You didn't do anything wrong, Dad." "She did." After they hung up, Derek called his son, Tyler, who was finishing his senior year of high school. That conversation was harder. Tyler had always been closer to his mother, and his first instinct was defensive. But when Derek explained about the medical report, Tyler's voice went cold. "She put you at risk." That's messed up, Dad." "Yeah," Derek agreed. "It really is." "Where is she now?" "At the house, I assume. I'm at a hotel. Do you want me to come stay with you?" Tyler offered. "No, son. Stay at the house tonight if you want. But maybe pack a bag. Things might get complicated over the next few days." By midnight, Derek's phone had finally stopped buzzing. He turned it to silent and tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face as Patricia read out each damning piece of evidence. Part of him felt guilty for the public humiliation, but a larger part felt a grim satisfaction that she'd finally faced consequences. The next morning, Derek's phone had 32 new messages. He scrolled through them over hotel coffee that tasted like regret. Patricia had texted, "James moved out last night. Went to his mother's. Brandon isn't speaking to him. How are you holding up?" Derek replied, "Surviving. Thank you again for yesterday. I couldn't have done it alone. We held each other up. That's what allies do. My lawyer is Lisa Chen at Bergen and Associates. She's good. I already gave her your name in case you want a referral. I'll call her tomorrow." There were messages from friends, mostly supportive, a few awkwardly trying to remain neutral. His brother had texted, "Heard what happened from Mike Peterson. He was at the party. I'm on the next flight. You don't go through this alone." And then there were Sarah's messages. Derek made himself read them. "Derek, please come home. We need to talk. I made a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. 23 years has to mean something. You had no right to humiliate me like that. What you did was cruel. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please just talk to me. The kids are devastated. How could you do this to them? James ended it weeks ago. It was already over. It didn't mean anything. Please. I'm begging you. Don't throw away our marriage." Derek set down his phone. The audacity of that last message nearly made him laugh. He wasn't throwing away their marriage. Sarah had done that the first time she'd checked into a hotel with James. He'd just been the one to finally acknowledge it was gone. Monday morning, Derek called Lisa Chen. By Tuesday afternoon, he'd filed for divorce. The papers would be served to Sarah by Friday. The story, predictably, had spread like wildfire through their social circle. Derek's phone rang constantly, some calls supportive, others clearly just fishing for gossip. He stopped answering most of them. Patricia called Wednesday evening. "How are you doing?" "Getting through it. You?" "The same." James's firm asked him to take a leave of absence. Apparently, several wives who were at the party called their husbands and expressed concerns about working with a man who'd cheat so brazenly. Corporate decided it was a PR issue. "Good," Derek said, and meant it. "Brandon's in therapy. My brother found someone who specializes in adolescent trauma. He's so angry, Derek. At James, at me for exposing it publicly, at the world. Will he be okay? Eventually. Kids are resilient. But it's going to be a long road." She paused. "Do you regret it? The party?" Derek thought about it honestly. "No. Do you?" "No. They deserved to face their choices. I just wish." She trailed off. "Wish what?" "That we'd deserved better. That the people we loved had been worthy of that love." "Yeah," Derek said softly. "Me too." 3 weeks later, Derek sat in Lisa Chen's office, reviewing the divorce settlement. Sarah had initially tried to fight it, claiming temporary insanity, claiming Derek's public humiliation had been abusive, claiming a dozen things that her lawyer had probably told her wouldn't hold water. In the end, faced with the medical report, the evidence of the affair, and the testimony Patricia was willing to provide, Sarah had agreed to a straightforward split. Derek would keep his retirement accounts, she'd keep hers. They'd sell the house and divide the proceeds. Emily's tuition was already covered by scholarships and loans. Tyler had 1 year left, and they'd split that remaining cost. "She's getting off easy," Lisa observed, sliding the papers across her desk. "Maybe," Derek said. "But I'm getting out. That's what matters." He signed the papers with a sense of finality. 23 years, reduced to signatures and settlements. That evening, Derek met Patricia for coffee. It had become a regular thing over the past month. Two people navigating the same wreckage, helping each other find solid ground. "James signed his papers yesterday," Patricia said. "We're officially done in 60 days. How's Brandon?" "Better. He told his therapist he was glad I exposed James publicly. He said at least now he knows his mother doesn't tolerate liars." Patricia smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "Small victories. Have you heard from James?" "He texted yesterday, asking if we could try counseling. I blocked his number." "Sarah still calls me sometimes," Derek admitted. "From different numbers. Begging for another chance." "What do you tell her?" "Nothing. I don't answer." Derek stirred his coffee. "My brother asked me if I'll ever trust anyone again. I didn't know what to say." "Maybe someday," Patricia said. "When we're ready. When we've healed enough to be vulnerable again." She looked at him with understanding. "But not today." "Not today," Derek agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, two survivors of the same storm. Outside, life continued. People walked dogs, cars passed by, the world turned regardless of their pain. But inside the coffee shop, for just this moment, they had shelter. 6 months later, Derek stood in the doorway of his new apartment. Modest, clean, his. Emily was helping him hang pictures while Tyler assembled a bookshelf in the corner. "This one." Emily held up a photo from a family vacation, years ago, before the lies. Derek looked at it, Sarah smiling, the kids building sandcastles, himself with his arm around his wife. People who no longer existed. Not really. "No," he said gently. "Let's stick with recent photos. Just you, me, and Tyler." Emily nodded and set it aside without argument. She understood. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, "Moving day for me too. New condo, fresh start." Brandon chose his room, the one with the good Wi-Fi. Some things never change. Derek smiled and replied, "Good. You both deserve a fresh start. Dinner this week?" "Absolutely. You're buying though. I'm broke from furniture shopping." "Deal." Tyler looked up from the bookshelf instructions. "Who's that?" "Patricia." We're getting dinner later this week. The lady from the party? Emily asked carefully. Yeah. His kids exchanged a look. Dad, Tyler said slowly, is this like a date thing? No, Derek said firmly. She's a friend. Someone who understands what I went through because she went through it too. That's all. Okay, Emily said, though she didn't look entirely convinced. But would it be so bad if someday it was more? Derek thought about it, about trust, about starting over, about whether hearts that had been broken could ever fully heal. Someday maybe. But right now, I'm learning to be okay on my own. Learning to be happy without needing someone else to complete the picture. That's good, Dad, Tyler said. That's really good. As afternoon faded to evening, Derek's new apartment slowly took shape. His children's laughter filled the space, music played from someone's phone, and pizza boxes stacked up on the counter. It wasn't the life he'd planned, wasn't the future he'd envisioned. But it was honest. It was clean. It was his. And for now, that was enough. Derek stood at his window, looking out at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. Somewhere out there, Sarah was probably still crafting her version of events, still trying to make herself the victim. Somewhere, James was probably doing the same. Let them, Derek thought. Let them rewrite history for whoever would listen. He knew the truth. Patricia knew the truth. Their children knew the truth. And sometimes, the truth was the only revenge you needed.